the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark, where we learn to accept living in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.tv. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We share information about the facts of radiation and the nuclear industry. We discuss vital current events and explore the roots of social engineering that has caused so many of our beloved friends and family to intentionally ignore the most critical, catastrophic event in human history. We interview activists who do the hard work to discover the truth and get the word out. We dispose the NRC's daily nuclear alerts and take phone calls from our listeners in an effort to fully engage on all topics that are changing our world. We explore exactly how radiation affects our bodies and minds to dissipate your fears and face the truth. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. We share information on how to take your life back from the systems intent on enslaving our bodies, minds, and souls. The Age of Fission radio show will create a venue that all will choose in order to actively engage to save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Good morning, UCY TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark. Let me say that better. UCY.tv radio listeners. It is Friday, September 18th, and today is Call-In Friday. I want to make a few announcements before I give our phone number out to start engaging, and I want to get my opinions out a little bit about the insanity that's considered our current culture. And this is one of them. There was an article in the Oregonian this week about how there were 104 rape test kits sitting at the police department in downtown Portland. And they were just waiting to get processed and just sitting there. So this speaks to why this issue of my announcement is very important. This Sunday in Portland, on the corner of Southwest Park and Salmon Street in Portland, Oregon at 1 p.m., there is going to be the Slut Walk. And for those of you, you might laugh at this, but it has been going on since 2011 worldwide. They have them in New Delhi, they have them in New Zealand, they have them in Canada. Let me give you the press release, and it will explain really why it's an important issue. Let me see. Slut Walk became a worldwide movement working to challenge. Let me repeat that. Slut Walk became a worldwide movement working to challenge mindsets and stereotypes of victim blaming and slut shaming around sexual violence. The Portland chapter of Slut Walk has organized a demonstration rally followed by a community march through downtown Sunday at 1 p.m. Since 2011, when Toronto Constable Michael Sanguinetti stated that women could avoid being raped if they would stop dressing like sluts, people of all genders and backgrounds have attempted to reclaim the word and dispel myths around victimization. We hope you will join us at our peaceful demonstration September 20th at PSU Park Blocks at Salmon at 1 p.m. That was kind of confusing. I'm glad they put this other one at Southwest Park and Salmon. This is a really big issue. Most of you know someone, no doubt most of you know someone who has been raped. They say the statistics are 1 in 4. When I was younger, I was assaulted. And, I did go to the police, and I did not go through a court trial because I did not want to become the person who was being accused. So this is an issue that affects many, 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 many more women and children than people will deny. You know, one of the things they say they call child abuse, it's not child abuse in many instances, it's actually rape. And so we really need to get around this idea of human beings growing up and being able to manage their anger, their thirst for power. There's a really great documentary that I recommend, frankly, everyone in our culture to watch called Tough Guys, Guise. You can find it on YouTube now. It's a full documentary, and it is by, I think the guy's name is Stephen Katz. It's really great. It talks about how we got into this. Again, it's about social engineering, folks. So it's time for us to take our power back in every way that we can. And so this is just one action that's happening. So I encourage, I'm going to be there. My friend Pat is coming with me. She's going to be walking. She's a transgender person who will be basically coming out for the first time in a big, gigantic city. So it's you know, being a transgender person is a really scary thing because there's a lot of violence surrounding that issue. People feel like it's worse. They used to feel like they had the right to beat up homosexuals. Well, we have learned in the last 50 years that there's more to sexuality than just gender. So that's a bigger conversation that we can have. That, again, is about social engineering, about what people think who we are sexually or our gender, which are two different distinct items. So anyways, I hope to see you there. If you're there, please, my friend Pat is tall, so like 6'3", so you'll see a very tall woman. That's probably me standing next to her. And at the Slut Walk, we hope there's at least 1,000 people. There usually are between 500 to 1,000 people that show up. And you know, like anything that goes on these days, there's all kinds of name-calling that goes on that, frankly, needs to end. I was actually the subject of a lot of name-calling or gossip this week on a Facebook threads of which I was blocked out. I find this really interesting that the anti-nuke movement has these power struggles. And it's interesting because we're talking about power. One of the things that really hit me home this week was the fact that we're considered kooks. We really are. You know, I challenged Chris Busby on his statement about, well, there should have been more pumps there and everything else. And I thought that was a ridiculous statement. And so I contacted him through Facebook, and we had kind of an internet conversation. I do want him to come on this radio show. I think he's taking his time. He's going to listen to us a little while to see, does he really want to associate himself with us, because that's one of the issues. You don't want to associate yourself with the really kooky people. You know, the thing is, we're all on the same side. Some people may not like Kevin Blanch's style, his anger, you know, I personally think he goes this is why I had to cut off my association with him. I think the name calling people whores, and you're not doing it's so ineffective. Just as people calling Kevin a con man is just ineffective. I was not conned. People who contribute to Kevin's activism are not conned. It may not be the activism you want to see happen, but I don't believe he's a con man. There's other things you could call Kevin, like foul-mouthed and completely off the charts, calling Dr. Helen Caldicott a whore. I think that's wrong, completely offensive, for which he ought to apologize and refrain from doing. And I don't think that Beyond Nuclear has done nothing. Many people out there say, Beyond Nuclear has done nothing for the movement. Well, guess what? You know what I've learned after a few short years of being actively engaged in this movement? Nothing matters. If you do anything at all, they just kill you. Like, seriously, you get Karen Silkwooded, no problem. They have no problem knocking people off. Or like Tim to Christopher, they stick you in a high prison jail for several years, and then you can't be an activist at all. So it's all ineffective, folks. Kevin's blustery ways, Beyond Nuclear, it's all ineffective. We're out here poking them in the eyes, and that's about the best that we're going to get out of them, because guess what? They have all the weapons. They have the military prisons, they have the industrial complex prisons, they have the nuclear weapons, they have regular weapons, they have cops that have been trained to treat us like dogs. And, they're going to go after us with everything they have. They're not giving in easily. We are really literally, if people haven't gotten it, we are assets on a balance sheet to be disposed of like that if they feel like it. And it is really, this is why we're on the air. This is what we're pushing back, because the only thing that we have is our intellect. The only thing that we have is we can change people's hearts and minds. This is one of the things Thomas Ackerman's coming on the radio next Wednesday, and we are really going to focus on this idea of waking up people's hearts. Our hearts need to be opened up, and I tend to say the heart chakra because people will relate to that because that's kind of the center of it all. But it's not just the chakra. I'm not really into dogma, and this is one of the reasons I really liked. People get stuck to their dogma, their ways of thinking about things. So it's very important for us to really express ourselves in a way that is peaceful, in a way that is edifying and helps each other lift each other up. It's extremely important that we not take things personally. We do our best. We do what we say, and we just don't manipulate and lie to make yourself feel better. I think that, frankly, the whole power trip inside of the anti-nuke movement is something that really has shocked me. I got actively engaged in politics, I guess, right after Bush stole the election, and right after I moved to Eugene, Oregon, I thought, okay, that's enough. There's a lot of activists here. I'm going to get engaged. I had always intentionally stayed out of it. And one of the things I discovered was that there's a lot, once people get a taste of power, they want more. And if you're not conforming to their idea, then the gossip starts. And the gossip is just about taking bricks from out of your foundation so that you'll topple. And that is not the way that humanity thrives. We thrive just like in our little families. We thrive by helping build each other up. Immediate forgiveness, love, and kindness, and allow our hearts to just open up. And it is really important that we act on our conscience. Right now, we have 6 million people in the United States who are drinking tainted uranium water. It's not just 1 times over the level of EPA limits, 2 times, 3 times. No, 89 times the level of uranium is in the drinking water for 6 million people in the United States. And it is not going to just cause liver damage, folks. Yes, it will cause liver damage, but it will also cause cancer. It will also cause our children to be sterilized. It will also cause childhood diseases. It causes diabetes. And we're just moving on like nobody's business. Let's talk about the Dumb and Dumber show that we watched the other day on CNN with the Republicans. Or we're talking about Bernie Sanders standing up for America against the anointed queen, Hillary Monsanto Westinghouse Clinton. We're missing the big picture and the big point. It is really important for us to actively engage and really remind these power centers that we have people who are being negatively affected by environmental catastrophes that are being ignored, completely ignored. Well, I see that we're at 15 minutes into the show. Thank everybody who listens to this radio show. Thank you for all of your kind support. UCY.TV does need your support. It's an independent radio station. So whatever money that you can contribute to this radio station to keep it on the air, I encourage everybody to do so because it is extreme. This is a venue. It's like a little gold mine. That's how I feel about this little radio show. Not just the show here, the whole station. A lot of our, most of the shows on this station have very thought and caring individuals who have done their own research, doing their own work, and exposing the information in this, quote, information age. Yeah, we have all the information there is, but nobody's listening, nobody's paying attention. The government's just completely ignoring it. we can go straight to, like, in our country, we can go to something like thehill.com and read about what they're doing in Washington, D.C., the bullshit lies they're telling themselves. You know, they're spinning themselves like little tops. So let me give you the number in case anybody actually does want to call in today. It's Call-In Friday. I would encourage anyone to call me. The phone number is 718-717-8296. And if you want to call and engage on any topics, you can. I would really look forward to the conversation. In the meantime, I have plenty on my mind to really discuss, because I'm just blown away at the complete lack of action. And, you know, Kevin says Beyond Nuclear's done nothing. Greenpeace is... Well, these people they're all doing something. Every single day they get up and they go to work, they're doing something. They think they're doing something. You know, just like when Kevin and I, you know, Kevin used to go out to these protests. Him and I would work together to get these protests together. He'd go to New York City, go to here, go to there. It all comes to big fat zeros. Big fat zeros. The reason is the people who aren't listening to this radio station, who, when I tell them, oh, I have a radio show now, they're like, oh, how do I find it? I can't find it. And I said, well, look, it's right on YouTube. It's really easy. Even if you just Google in UCY.tv or UCY TV, it'll pop up. The Google tells us everything now. And they still, well, I just haven't had time, and I can't, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, we're all busy, folks. I mean, I encourage everyone to continue to urge your friends and family to listen to this radio show, to get an education, to figure out the information that is out there that is warning us of the dire, dire consequences. On my YouTube channel, Nuts for Art, NUTZFORART, I started reading a book. Hold on, we have a call here. Let me see if I can add them in without cutting anybody off. Good morning, you're on UCY.tv. This is Lonnie Clark.
Good morning, Lonnie. I agree with your point of big...
Of what? Hello? Hello?
Lonnie, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Hi.
Wonderful. I agree with your point about big fat zeros completely. It's big fat zeros. There is no amount of protesting. There's no amount of petitioning your government, writing letters to senators. There's no amount of that will continue this. Now, you have to take a look at this in a completely different way, possibly a more violent way than you're used to looking at things, because honestly, violence is the only thing that works. And if we need any proof of that, we can look to the formation of the State of Israel, and we can contrast that with the civil rights movement in the United States.
Oh my God. I'm sorry, but that violence, that sort of makes me laugh. That sort of really hits me deep. I'm sorry to laugh, but I'm shocked by that. That was probably the last thing I expected to hear. Violence is the only thing that works. I can't tell you how much I disagree with that, but go ahead.
That's wonderful that you disagree with that, and this is the perfect venue to discuss the disagreement. I'm not trying. I'm just giving you the way I see it. I see what you've done, and you've done wonderful things. I enjoy listening to your show.
Thank you.
But you can look back as you are an add-on to previous people who protested and said that things are wrong. Would that be inaccurate, or are you completely different?
I agree with you completely. All the protesting. Look, how many people were in Japan? 100,000 people trying to stop the restart of the Sendai nuclear power plant.
And not a one of them threw a rock or fired a shotgun or flipped over a truck or made somebody bleed. You know, they sat out there and they waved signs and sang songs. And guess what? That doesn't do anything.
Right. You know what? Actually, I saw this story this morning that shocked me. Israel has now authorized the use of deadly weapons against stone throwers, which is basically children in Palestine.
Right. Right, and then you have to think about how shitty is those kids' life if the only way that they can have any sort of control over their life is to throw a rock at a tank.
Right, exactly.
They get the message. They get the message. Those little kids throwing the rock at the tank know the score. Everybody else does not know the score. We're all wondering, let's sing a song, let's parade, let's have, I don't want to necessarily shame the slut walk, but that's not going to do anything. You know what stops, like for the slut walk, for instance, you know what stops rape? Cutting the guy's junk off, stabbing him in the heart when he does something. That stops rape.
Well, actually, that's true. You know what it is? It's about accountability, what you're talking about. The reason that we have the slut walk, and it's kind of an interesting little protest. I thought it was the first year I went, I was really curious about what was going to be said, and it was very interesting because the organizers talk about their experiences, the women talk about it's an astounding level of women that get attacked, and we just move on and act like it's no big deal. But you are right about the accountability, and that's really the issue. And I think, I think maybe that's why my initial reaction was to laugh when you said this, because in my conscious mind, I say, no, I'm not. I grew up in an excessively violent childhood. Really seriously excessive. My dad almost killed my sister. She laid in bed for 3 weeks and almost died from being beaten the crap out of. And I just have kind of...
I can sympathize with your pain on something like that. I didn't have necessarily the most rosy childhood myself.
Well, when you come to that kind of a thing, you grow up and you say, well, I'm never, I'm sort of nonviolent. Now, that was my reaction, but
don't you make that decision at a very, very young age? And isn't a very young age kind of a bad place to say, I will never do something like that?
Well, not only that, you know what, I think in this regard, I think that what's happening here is we're like a tea kettle that's on the boil, and I think that you're right. Like, many times I've written this, like the pitchforks are coming out. Like, people, when the pitchforks come out, the politicians are going to run scared, and they need to, because at a certain point, people in this country, when it boils over, right now what they're doing is directing our anger towards each other. ISIS, the migrants, which is really a social engineering thing. They're calling these people who are refugees migrants, and they're building up anger. We have that with what I call economic refugees from South America, which are the illegal aliens and undocumented people that come into this country.
They're a refugee of economics. That's right, but they're really more of a tool used to destroy this nation.
Well,
because
it's not just this.
If you destroy the nation's ability to make money, you've now taken away the average guy's happiness and his ability to grow. And then all he looks forward to is 99-cent menu and football on TV, because that's all he can afford.
Well, you know what? This is what I tell people, to think outside that box. Like, the only way and I think this is why, like, for me, coming to this conclusion at this point in my life, like, I was a single mom whose children, their dad basically never paid us child support. I was living in LA, and we struggled a lot. I'd worked 2-3 jobs. I was considered really poor by limits, and I don't believe in taking welfare or food stamps, any of that stuff, so I resisted any of that. And I will tell you what, my children never really actually realized we were poor until they were in high school, when they, one of their friends got
clothes. When it comes to clothes and items of status, which are media driven, it's all completely media driven.
But this is the point here. This is all about, the whole thing really is about social engineering. And I think that you're right about the violence is going to be the thing. I mean, all these revolutions do come about through violent actions. We've never really transcended from one culture to the next.
Well, it just doesn't work, because the people you are rebelling against are the people who are keeping you down under the force of a gun.
Yeah.
That's just the short of it right there.
I think about the work that Gandhi did and the peaceful revolution he did against the British in India. But frankly, there was a lot of violence that went down. There wasn't.
There was a lot of violence, and it took 40 years, and they're no better off. They still live in a caste system.
Exactly. They're just not run by the. Well, they are actually in many ways still run by the Brits. It's the same shit, only different. I mean, you're actually right. But at this point, I mean, to me, this is the criticality of it all. We don't have time to fuck around. Like, the planet is dying. I mean, there's a story this morning on ENE News about gigantism, about this big 6-foot fish. I mean,
you know, the planet is dying, but the planet will be here for much longer than we are. And we are dying, and we are dying right now.
Well, you know what? I mean, have you read that article about the sixth extinction that's happening on the planet? The mammals are the actually on the planet right now. We're entering in the sixth extinction to ever happen on our planet. And it's the mammals who are dropping off the cliff at a faster rate than any other previous extinction. There's been different animals that died, and the dominant animals died in different, in the different extinction events that happened. But the mammals now are dropping.
But if you look at the MIT report that came out about 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago, it says that by 2025, half of the children born in the United States will be autistic, and of those children born autistic, 90% will be boys.
Wow.
When you're faced with that information, I'm sorry if the snail darter doesn't make it.
Wow. Right.
Wow. Right. So, in my view,
children.
the violence is possibly a little more critical to whatever kind of change is going to come. And I don't think that violence is actually going to really solve anything. I think violence is going to bring in a new way, and it may be just as shitty as the current way. It may be more shitty than the way we are right now.
Well, look, this is the issue here for me. Fundamentally, this is like the fundamental core that I can't forget. The underlying thread of all of it to me. We have nuclear power plants all over this entire globe right now that are really destruction machines. We have nuclear power plants in the middle of the Ukraine fight, and that there's a lot of hidden information that you can find in various sources that talks about those power plants, falling into the hands of the rebels, and those people are selling the spent fuel for to buy weapons, to make weapons. I mean, it's out of control, the level of threat that these nuclear power plants have put.
Well, if you really want to get into the level of threat of nukes, let's just take a look at Israel holding the entire world at hostage with their 411 undeclared nuclear missiles.
Right, exactly. Well, and they what's really hilarious about that is they act like they're doing us a favor just by victimizing the Gazans, as if that they're being kind by not bombing the crap out of them.
Well, I hate to go out on a limb here, but I dare say that through the control of the media and through control of the banks, they're victimizing everybody, not just Gazans. And like it or not, we're all Palestinians now.
That's a good... I'm going to steal that. We're all Palestinians.
Please do, and share it with as many as you can. Because the movie They Live was a documentary.
They Live. Where do you find that? Where could we find that They Live? Is it on like Amazon?
You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Amazon.
Okay.
It's an old movie that didn't get a whole lot of play.
It's called They Live.
It's the best. It's the best movie ever made in the United States, and
What's
it's a documentary.
about? What's the topic about?
Magic sunglasses and seeing what's really behind everything.
Wow, really? Okay. I mean, this is really what we're about, and this is the thing. I was sort of alluded to that in my comments. We live in the information age. All this information is out there. Only we're not able to digest it because we're being bombarded with it, and then I honestly got hit by a ton of bricks this week when I had a conversation with someone who basically said, "Look, the way that the fact that you're talking about nuclear power so blatantly being a danger, an imminent danger, puts you in the Looney Tune area," and I'm like, "What?" Like, anybody with a conscious mind can actually see, if you read John Goffman and Arthur Tamplin's work, is sound science. There was sound science that went down in the 50s, and in the 70s they were raising up the red flags, and it worked. Dr. Caldecott got 1 million people in New York City to stop the nuclear power plant. But these people have long-term agenda plans.
But let me counter that 1 million people in New York City. Let's go to Joseph Stalin, right? Joseph Stalin didn't fear 30,000 voters. He feared 1,000 men with 30 caliber rifles. Protesting doesn't work.
Well, not especially
none of this works, and none of it worked in before. The protesting never worked before. Anything that we've gained through protesting was a bone thrown to the dogs.
Wow. Well, I mean, look, I don't know. I personally do not want to engage in violence. I've often thought about this. What would I do? I do know how to shoot weapons. I have...
The easiest way to think about the engaging in violence is it's you or them.
Yes, but
that's really the only way.
This is the thing. This is kind of a shocking thing that I always put off in the back of my head. A friend of mine's husband is being trained to be what's called an emergency police officer. And this is really freaky. He was telling us, I live in Eugene, he said that the whole town has been sectioned off into little areas. Like him, he's going to be in charge of a little tiny section of Eugene in the event of emergency.
The West Bank of Eugene. That's interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, to go along with your friend who's taking this police training, you know that almost every sheriff's department in the United States sends officers to go and be trained in Israel in crowd suppression tactics.
I do know.
And sheriff's departments in the United States have bought skunk water crowd repellent. Skunk water is a really nice, happy name, kind of gives you that Pepe Le Pew view in your head. But no, what is skunk water? It's raw sewage and rotting animals.
Oh my God, you're kidding.
And they spray that on people. They spray that. They're currently actively and have been for the last 10 years spraying that on people in Gaza. They've got that here in the United States now. Now, imagine that 1 million people protest in New York over nuclear power, which is a great, big, huge, expensive industry, and there's a lot of money defending it, and that lot of money has a lot of guns. All those people get sprayed with the skunk water. That's coming, and you know it.
Well, I think in New York, this is the thing. Well, let me get back to this idea about these police departments, because one of the things he said that really freaked me out, he had to buy riot gear. That was a requirement. He's fully armed to the tilt, and he said, well, we need to protect. I said, look, you don't need to protect me wearing that type of gear. Like, it's to insulate you from the atrocities that you're expected to commit. If you're helping gather people around in an emergency, you don't need riot gear. This isn't about shooting weapons or harming people. And he said, well, you don't know who's going to be attacking me. I'm like, why would people attack you if in the course, the whole mentality, the training, this is the point, like his brain, and this is a, quote, liberal guy. He's a person who's like committed Democrat and considers himself a liberal. And I'm like, it stunned me, completely stunned me. And I think that, honestly, I hear exactly what you're saying about the violence. I really don't adhere to violence. If it comes to the doorstep, I could certainly protect myself, but we're having violence.
If it comes to the doorstep, you've waited too long. If it comes to your doorstep, you should have been active in the violence 2 blocks from your house.
Well, I don't mean to our doorstep. I mean, like, when this is the...
Well, I'm speaking metaphors. I'm not actually speaking, like if it's at your door. But you know what I mean. If it comes to that point where it's at your door, you failed in the process. You should have been violent far before that.
So let me ask you this, just to be clear with what you're suggesting, that there is really no point in participating in the political system, and that
absolutely not. There is no point.
And that
vote twice, vote 3 times, write letters to your senators. It would be more effective if you wrote letters to a Diebold machine.
So I basically get that you're saying what we need to really be doing is putting all that energy into preparing for when the collapse will happen, because it is coming. And I don't know about you, but I can feel it. Like, we will have a time when there's no groceries on the shelves because
I think you're foolish if you're not, if you can acknowledge that it's coming and you don't act upon your innate gut instinct. I think you're absolutely foolish if you don't.
I mean, but what you're suggesting is that that's really the primary activity. It's pointless to protest. It's pointless to actively engage your elected officials. Pointless to vote. Pointless to get involved in any of it.
I think if you live in a town of 1,500 people and you have, say, a city council meeting where everybody knows everybody by their first name, I think you might have a chance of having your voice heard and your vote meant for something. When you're in a metropolitan area of 50,000 people or more, no, your vote doesn't mean jack shit.
Well, I have to, fundamentally, I did get involved in politics here in Eugene when I first came here in 2004, and I have to say, in our little town, there is a lot of misappropriations of funds. I used to go to all the city council meetings and listen to all their bullshit, and it just seemed to me, I did it for 3 or 4 years thinking that's what was wrong, was Americans needed to get actively engaged in their government. So I went to...
Americans needed to actively get engaged in their government 50 years ago.
Exactly. And so what I discovered was I don't count, they don't care, and I'm just not rich enough for them to really even listen to me. And they're going to do... Like, we have a city manager here who... Every year Kevin did a video about it when he came here to Eugene the first time. There's this little cesspool area. It's been cleaned up since he's been here because they have this big project now downtown, but that actually built the brand new federal building, so they had to clean it up. But for years and years, there was money appropriated to clean up this little cesspool area right next to the river. And this guy, for some reason, every year misappropriated the funds for probably 7 years.
That happens in every city every day.
It was,
and I'm talking from the 1,500-person city to the 8 million-person metropolis. That happens every day, everywhere.
And people were protesting. His name was out there. People were blah, blah, blah.
I'll bet if that guy who was misappropriating that money was found hanging by the neck from an overpass, I'll bet you things would have changed.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, honestly, that's...
Well, if he was hanging dead by the neck from an overpass, he wouldn't have been misappropriating any more funds.
So, this is the question. Like here, we live in what we consider to be a, quote, civil society, but I think that in a way
Civil society is just order on the plantation. And I'll give you an example of such. The civil rights movement for the blacks.
Excuse me. Can you tell me your name? Sure. Because I didn't hear your name.
Yeah, my name is Michael. My name is Michael.
Thanks, Michael. It's a pleasure to talk with you, I have to say.
I really enjoy your show, and it's been a very nice diversion from other doom and gloom. It's been nice to see another person's voice from another area of the country.
Oh, good.
No matter how wrong you may be. in my nicest possible way. But what I'm trying to say is in the 60s, in the 50s and 60s, when the civil rights movement was going on, and blacks marched, and they got tasered. Not tasered, but they got hosed. They got beaten. They got hit with dogs. They got shot. They got hung. Yeah. Well, in the areas where blacks banded together and fought back, and I mean physically fought back, whether it be through firearms, it'd be through physical fisticuffs or whatever, then it didn't happen.
Uh-huh.
And I'll even go back to the Bundy Ranch situation. The government was going to come in, and they were faced with overwhelming firepower, and they backed off.
So what about...
That's really all that matters. I mean, Chairman Mao says all power flows from the barrel of a gun. And in the end, I'm not a communist, but he's absolutely right. And that's why the laws are as they are now. That's why cops shoot people for an old man because he's got a golf club that he's using for a cane. Oh, you moved your hands too fast off the steering wheel when I asked you to go get your driver's license, so I had to shoot you. This kind of stuff happens all the time. And really the only answer is the violence because if nothing else we've done has worked. I don't know. I
I mean, can you hear I'm resistant to this whole thing, but on an
Absolutely, I absolutely do, because this is a foundation-shaking idea.
it is. And actually,
But you have to shake the foundations when the entire house is falling down. The entire house is coming down. We have cities that are going bankrupt. We have cities that have dirty water. I mean, if for no other goddamn reason on the face of the planet and throughout the entire history of man, the only reason to have a city is to provide clean water to the people there. And we don't even get that. Yet we've got enough money to give to every other country in the world. We have politicians that do not enforce the laws that are currently on the books. You're being fed pornography. You're being fed filth and perversion through every form of media that you get.
Michael, I'm going to add
to be honest with you, I don't think that standing around with signs and yelling and screaming is going to do anything.
Hey, Michael, I'm going to add someone to this call. Hold on just 1 second.
You know, I'm gonna let you go. I gotta go.
Okay.
I gotta get moving. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for giving me the effort. And I really appreciate your show.
Sure, thank you.
Go, Michael.
Thank you.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, this is Vince. Hey, stay on here with me, Michael. Listen, I just want to weigh in because there's two supposed sides that we're looking at here, and we've been talking about it since yesterday. Is lead them with love or lead them with lead, but always remember windage and elevation. Okay. So this is where we're at. We're in a fight right now. We're in a revolution. We're not looking at one coming. We're not looking for the New World Order to take over. The New World Order has been around for a very long time.
I agree completely with you.
They're setting in hard right now is what we're looking at. It's this tipping point that we're coming to where we're gonna fall off the cliff, or we're gonna use that lever and fulcrum to tip the world right back, right side up again. Now, I say walk tall or walk softly and carry a big stick, or walk tall and carry a big stick. But anyways, be prepared. Certainly, nonviolence does not mean that you don't take self-defense. And so many people are on this level where we're discussing of taking a stand. Now, Michael, we need people like you. We need people, whether we find problem in leadership. Now, I'm going to tell you, from being at the Bundy Ranch, I know these people, these 3%ers and the militia. Hey, those were real Americans that came out there to stand in the gap, despite the fear, because everybody almost that was there was true and honest. I saw the infiltration. I saw the provocateurs. I have a good read on people. It's hard to fool me. It really is. But I think we're losing a lot, and as Jules said earlier, that in this psychological warfare that's being engaged upon us, we censor ourselves. We put ourselves in these separate camps where we fight amongst ourselves, this divide and conquer. We have no hope of winning. So don't think that I'm some sissy when I say, hey, big love, baby. That is truly our only hope of winning, because history will show the armed revolution in the streets. And don't get me wrong, when it happens, I mean, you're going to have to pick a side. You're going to have to pick the side to live or to vow. So, we're constantly faced with choices, and some of them aren't pretty choices sometimes.
Well, most of the choices are not pretty. I mean, part of what's happened is, we have this big grand culture. I mean, in my view, I think, like, we talk about what's American, what's not American. Well, actually, frankly, America was built on violence. I mean, we slaughtered the Native American people. We tortured them and uprooted them, forced them to live in different places. We didn't come to this nation. We didn't create this nation peacefully. We're not really a peaceful nation, and it is coming to grip. It's the fact that we've refused to live in peace is coming to bear itself right now. That's what I think. But part of it is really, to me, it all comes back to the nuclear thesis. We have ignored the idea, and Goffman and Tamplin really jumped up and down to try to warn us. We have gone down a road that we cannot reverse back from. We now live in the age of fission. The biggest threat that we have these gigantic nuclear power plants that require some type of a civilized system just so that they don't destroy all life on this planet. If we had a serious hardcore revolution, look at those nuclear power plants in the Ukraine. They have been taken over by people who are completely grotesquely incompetent and have no capacity to really manage them. Those are disasters in the waiting. There's a reason we don't hear about them. So, I mean, I agree with you about the big love. I sort of balk at the idea that violence is the only answer because, frankly, I mean, I grew up with that. I mean, I'm one of 8 children who grew up in an excessively violent home. Of all my siblings, I think there's only 2 of us who have made it to adulthood without being completely incompetent, psychopathic, self-harming people. Violence only begets violence, but, I can respect that idea that really you do need, I think you're right, Vince, being nonviolent does not mean not defending yourself or not standing up for yourself and protecting yourself and facing force with force. The problem is we live in I wish Michael had not hung up so that we could engage on this. Michael, if you're listening, please call back. That would be fun. But I don't know. I have a really hard time with this idea that we need to go. I mean, it's like crabs in the bucket. I mean, the whole idea is, do we want to become as violent as these people? But frankly, the violence has already been perpetrated on us. Look at the tainted water. 6 million people living with uranium being every single day. And it's just like, yesterday's news. And what is it going to take for us to really get these? I don't understand how the senators and the people in Nebraska, every elected official who has control over those systems in Nebraska isn't creating big, gigantic stink over it. Nebraska is toast. Seriously, if anybody looked at that article that talked about this, just Google in 6 million people uranium, and the article from I think it's called insiderbusiness.com, has a little map. It shows you where these 6 million people are. Maybe this is Michael. Hold on just a second.
Good. Michael will be able to tell you a little something about that magical 6 million number that keeps
Michael,
popping up. I find that pretty interesting.
Michael, are you on the air?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so thank you for calling
Hey,
back.
Vince. No, I'm sorry. If I'd have known it was Vince, I'd have stayed on. I thought somebody else was coming through.
No. Well, we're really glad that you called back. So obviously you guys all know each other, and I'm glad that we have this conversation. But were you listening to what we were talking about? Because this whole thing about the nuclear power plants is a big issue. We need a system to just maintain these nuclear power plants. These are big things that have to happen. We can't just shit can the whole system. I mean, how do we walk ourselves backwards from this one unless we plan on total destruction of the planet, which I don't plan on? I mean,
but maybe it's not your plan. But maybe it's not your plan that matters.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I mean, got that one. My plan doesn't matter at all. Like, that's the fundamental, and this is the whole thing about the anti-nuke activist movement that really has hit me hard, is like, all these people say, well, nothing's worked, nothing worked. Nothing is going to work because they have no intention of allowing anyone to do any work because they are violent. They will kill anybody who gets in their way. Anyone.
Yeah, when you got something that worked, like at the Bundy Ranch, I was there the day before the standoff took place. Me and Jason Patrick was up all night talking, and unbeknownst to us, Ammon Bundy was listening to us inside the trailer. We had talked among ourselves. We really need to be on the lookout for any provocateurs. And in the beginning, there were so many people, and the word was out to be watching it. That I, in a big way, I was really surprised that nothing really kicked off there that next day. But like I said, that self-policing of the people there. Now, as time went on, because it started out with all these people from all different walks of life, of every, as far as cause or whatever, and then it got thinned down because those people that were sent in there to divide and conquer, they did a very effective job. And the dialectic was not understood, as it is not understood today by most people, on how these operations work. So, man, I say that we've got to set aside our differences and our different understandings and definition of what is, and let's seek that part where we have a commonality, and we're going to have to join forces. That's just it right there. And without
the only commonality that we have right now is that we're all being subjugated.
Yes, we are being subjugated. You're right. I mean, none of us have really. We are, but I actually think that the system is going to collapse in on itself. I don't believe that we really need to do it by force. I don't think that's going to. I mean, unless what you're saying is that unless we do it by force, the system won't collapse in on itself.
Well, it may be better to act of your own accord than being forced to act. I would dare say that. It's better to act on your own impulse than it is being made to react.
And a lot of those impulses, honestly, though, are programmed. And people don't realize it. You, me, or anybody else. We could all be going on assumptions that we assume to be original to ourselves from our own free thought. And there's no way it cannot be influenced from some point or another. And that's why I say to explore far and wide from each end of the left-right paradigm, the dialectic, and that way you can come out with a much more informed opinion that has not been given to you by talking heads or others.
I get that, but you know what, Vince, really this is the issue is, okay, we get our own opinion, we look all over and we come up with a really reasonable thing. We're living in a system that is still, and this is where I agree with Michael's point, the system it doesn't matter what our opinions are. We don't matter. We're not, we're on a need-to-know basis and we don't need to know. Yeah, right? And so the whole thing, they don't care if we live or die. 6 million people don't even have drinking water. That, 89, it's not like 2 times the EPA level. It's 89 times over the limit. That is going to cause, and it's going to take about 10 years, 5 years, something like that. It's not going to happen quickly. It's cumulative. It piles up. It's like you're building bricks, and pretty soon you're just building, if you ever built a brick wall and you don't have a side to it, you put bricks on top of each other, at some point the bricks topple over. And in our case, that's called cancer, leukemia, or some other catastrophic disease, because our systems can't handle it. So
stop kill.
So then this is the question, like how do we get, when this, I was stunned to realize that I had been cornered into thinking that I'm lunatic and I'm a radical because I'm all for shutting down all nuclear energy. I think we need to shut the entire system down yesterday. We need to stop. There was an article that the guy from North Korea says he's restarting his nuclear power plant so he can start building nuclear weapons. If that doesn't tell you what nuclear power plants are for, nothing does. And
but guess what? He hasn't been invaded since he's had a nuclear weapon. And really, in the end, we gave him the nuke, so it's kind of a
tool of the United States. I firmly believe. He was educated in the United States.
But it's not a tool of the United States. It's a tool of the banks.
Yes.
The bank wins no matter what country loses. The bank always wins.
Right. Well, the banks are not going to win this time because they've created a system that's about to kill. When we look at what this nuclear stuff does to the life force on this planet, we have some serious, those people that are making all the money, they really need to do some serious investments on how to help protect our planet, because we are seriously being threatened.
But they make the money because they've already made the choice to not make that research. And I really want to clarify, I'm not advocating violence. I'm not advocating anybody getting out and doing anything stupid right now. But what I will advocate right now is don't pay any more taxes. Don't pay a dime in taxes anymore. Seriously, they can't do a damn thing if they had 70 million people not paying a dime in taxes.
Yeah, but you know what? That's not a possibility because we have the system.
No, it's really not. So
it's not.
In the end, the violence is what's gonna happen.
Well, I think it's going to turn into a quagmire. Like, I believe that when we're going to hit a crisis in this country, we're going to have a catastrophic environmental event, probably on the West Coast, some earthquake or something is going to happen, and the the food basket is going to be cut off. That's the issue. When there is no more food in the stores, or when there's no gasoline.
Well, there's plenty of history that shows that, controlling a mass of people is best done through starvation. And it's really not controlling, that's the nice word, it's the elimination of a large chunk of undesirable, depending on your meaning of the word undesirable.
Yeah,
that can be accomplished rapidly through starvation. A hell of a lot faster than shoving people into ovens, that's for damn sure.
Let me tell you what, John Goffman wrote that book. I read it on my YouTube channel, Population Control Through Nuclear Pollution. And that was about a 200-page book that I read. And honestly, the theme throughout the whole book is that if we don't stop the nuclear industry, this was written in 1970, if we don't stop them, it will control the population because it's completely damaging. His conclusion at the end was, we need activists to stop these people because they're megalomaniacs, bottom line. And that didn't happen. So here we are 40 years later, like in the middle of a catastrophe that's ongoing, and the news media is giving us the Miss America contest. It's so beyond outrageous. It's unbelievable.
Well, I came up for the title of my book, if ever I write it, just the other day, and it would be called The Archived Events of the End of the World. And I think that's basically everybody in their own way, whatever cause or idea that they're speaking of, it's kind of addressing that in one sort of way or another, because that front, this war against us, it has encompassed in every aspect. Not only is all the systems that we work within, from schooling and government and the religious aspect, all meant to control us, we don't even realize who the enemy is so many times, and do not realize who our allies are, even if the enemy of our enemy should be our friend at times. Sometimes we're going to have to, like I said, put aside our differences and come together, or it's lost.
I agree. We do need to put aside our differences. And the reality is, I believe in the power of love. I think if we raise our level of consciousness, and I'm not saying that it may not turn violent, but if things do end up becoming violent, which frankly seems like the logical conclusion, if we're motivated, just like the black people who came together to free themselves from a lot of the oppression, which they haven't totally broken free of, but when they came together, it was through an act of love, and that power of love allowed them to endure the violence and to stand up to people who apparently had all the power in the world. And I mean, that's kind of a good example that we have on this. It's sort of the only example that we have on the whole thing. It's this is a big issue, because right now we are literally being coerced and colluded, and those of us who are aware and awake are being demeaned in ways that harm the entire culture. It is kind of a shock to the system, when you're actually consciously awake, and this is canker, like 100,000 people in Japan wanting no nuclear power, and the government just said, up yours, we don't care. I mean,
because they did not have the force to back it. That's the plain and simple, skinny and dirty of it all. They didn't have the force to back it. You could have had everybody in Japan there, and it wouldn't have mattered not, because they didn't have a way to fight. They didn't have something that scared the government. They didn't have something that scared the oppressor.
Hey, you guys, we've got like less than 30 seconds. Excuse me, but we've got less than 30 seconds on the air. I want to thank both of you men for calling in. I really appreciate the conversation. I can't even begin to thank you, Michael, for turning this conversation into real conversation. And thanks, Vince, for calling in. We'll talk to you guys next week on Monday. Thank you, UCY TV.